Hey everybody, this is Joseph Vogeley of Stokely Films. I'm the co-writer, the director, and the creator of the new slasher sensation Specimen Sex, which will be out on DVD and digital in the next few weeks here. It's going to be amazing. And welcome to another episode of, hey, what podcast is this? My very good, my very beautiful, my very titularly amazing friend, bodaciously named...
Do you want me to forward you the $50 now for that or later?
You can do it later. It's okay.
Okay. Well, then I'm Mariana Chipaleta, and this is No Country for Joe and Mariana, and I like to eat raw hot dogs.
My God, I've never heard a woman be sexier than that in any other way. Holy moly. I want to welcome everybody to our very special 4th of July special. Boy, there's fireworks, there's everything like that. And boy, do we got a really great topic for you today. We are going to be breaking down our very special, very important, very deep opinions on the Terminator franchise. And we are joined today by our very good friend, James Ong, the amazing video gamer that you've seen before on this channel. And he does this great channel over on Twitch. James, could you tell us real quick, what is your Twitch handle, as they call it in the cool young person world?
Sure, man. So my gaming channel is GQ Asian Dude Gaming. I do a lot of variety gaming. I actually have been gaming for over 30 years. I actually grew up in high school. Yeah. I went with high school with Joe, and we share a lot of common interests, especially the topic that we're talking about today.
This is very true. Actually, and I want to say that we have joined James a couple times now, myself and Mariana, the wonderfully beautiful, the very bodaciously talented from the boot over in that European area, Mariana.
The boot.
We have joined James over on his Twitch channel a couple times. So if you ever want to just like check out some cool video games, go check him out. And sometimes we show up. We have a really great time. Today we're going to be talking about our passion, our love, our joie de vivre, if you will, of the Terminator franchise and kind of like where we want things to go. But first, hey, Mariana.
Yes, Joe.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the news. So sometimes on this show, we talk about, just the popular culture in general. Usually we focus on the horror genre. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what's going on there, what's going on here. Really, we just love talking about what's going on in our hearts and in the geek world, as it were. So Mariana, what's going on in the news right now?
Well, I found out something kind of exciting. One of my favorite franchises is Godzilla, and when they make parodies of these movies, I thoroughly enjoy them. There's this one movie called Notzilla, Notzilla, and it's already been in production, and so now the indie rights have been bought to be able to release it. Basically, it's the scientist from Japan brings over an egg to the United States, and it grows, and beer and alcohol makes this monster grow huge. And of course, you have the mad scientist who's trying to take it down with a nuclear power, whereas, his, I guess, daddy is trying to, tame him a little bit. But it's basically a giant Godzilla that drinks beer.
That sounds awesome. I think I'm a big fan. Well, I'm not like the biggest fan of Godzilla, as it were, but I have been, I saw the 1990s film in the theater. I did not like it, but I have seen a lot of the other older ones from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and I really do appreciate those. What are they called? When they talk about giant monsters in Japan? Kaiju, yes. I very much enjoy films of that nature when people put on these costumes and they fight. I think some of them are very good. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm looking forward to, I haven't seen the last couple that they came out with, but they're on my list of seeing things to do.
A lot of neat Easter eggs in the most recent one from like the original 60s.
Oh, okay,
Godzilla,
cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to those. there's other cool things that are in the news right now. So I recently picked up that. So everybody knows that Disney purchased Sony, right, or Fox, right, and Fox owns Sony, and so all of those properties from Sony and Fox reverted over to Disney. Some people may have like a positive thing about this, a negative thing about this. Sometimes it's a good, sometimes it's a bad. Sometimes it's kind of interesting. So Fox and Sony before kind of owned the rights to making films for the Alien and the Predator franchises, and they would release that out to Dark Horse comic books. Basically, for the past 30 plus years, Dark Horse comic books have been doing the Alien and Predator comic books. They're separate entities. Sometimes they're together. And actually, Dark Horse actually brought those two things together, which ended up being the thing that made those movies. They're like, oh, those two things together are pretty cool. And then they decided to make a couple movies. The movies weren't that great. But there's some interesting things. And if you're an Alien or a Predator fan, you enjoyed those in one way or another. But here's the interesting thing. So now Disney bought Alien and Predator, and now Marvel, which is owned by Disney, is going to be making their own comic books. And Marvel, in my opinion, has not been that great in the last 5 years or so. There's been some decent, sorry, I got this little fly here, but there's been some like a decent comic book here or there, but overall it's been kind of like meh. And however, that being said, I saw some of the artwork that the artist David Finch, who's very popular he did like Moon Knight and some Avengers stuff, and he's done some really amazing. He's very detailed. He did some of these Xena comic books, covers of the Xena comic books that I really liked. But he did this cool one of like Predator holding an Iron Man head, and that looked pretty cool. So I think there's a potential for Marvel to do really cool Alien and or Predator and or Alien versus Predator comic books, which I'm kind of excited about. And maybe that'll lead to a whole new thing. James.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about Alien versus Predator and kind of like what's that's going to happen? The Last Predator. How did you feel about the Last Predator film?
The last Predator film I saw was Predators, right?
Yeah.
So that was the one where, and this is spoiler territory, but that's the one where y'all got beamed up to the Predator planet, right? To get hunted?
Yeah, it was produced by Robert Rodriguez. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually was kind of disappointed. Okay, so I found out that the role of Lawrence Fishburne in that movie was actually supposed to be given to Arnold. As like, so I read that because I was doing more research because of the new Predator game that came out, right? And it was supposed to be given to him, but they felt that they were doing Dutch a disservice by shoving him on that planet like by himself, right? Because he's the only survival of the Predator like hunt, right? And so, and if you've seen the movie, like Lawrence Fishburne gets wrecked in that movie, right? So it would be a disservice to that character. And it was like, I felt like that movie wasn't really featuring the Predators. It was mostly featuring the people on the planet. And to me, when like the appeal of Predator 1 and Predator 2 was that the Predator is mysterious, right? And then, but of course, if you've seen those two movies, like you already know what a Predator looks like. And in this one, it felt like there was more dynamic between each of the characters versus the relationship and the fear of the Predator. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and to me, it didn't really capture that. And I feel like over time, that's been the challenge of trying to get people to get into the Predator movies, is that like that first time you see the Predator, you're like, oh my God, what is that? Right. But we're just so like, we already know what it looks like. So we need another shock level to kind of draw us back in. So, and that's pretty much my opinion on that movie. But kind of going back about your Marvel having, rights to Predator. I was actually quite concerned about it first because usually Disney and Marvel are very, household names, and they have to like tone things down, and Predator is not like that at all, right? But then I started thinking like they actually have versions of these comics that are super dark, super gory, and if you know the Punisher, there's Punisher, and then there's Punisher Warzone.
Yes.
And there's also like Dark Knight Punisher, and those Dark Knight and Warzone Punishers are super heavy, super dark. So I'm always like, oh wait, well they can usually just put the Predator and Alien movies or the franchise under those titles, so this way they don't have to hold back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, okay, cool, like there's still hope, because at first hearing the news, I was like, oh my god, I don't know what I feel about that, but then I realized there's other branches of comic book types in Marvel, so it's all hope is not lost. So
That's and I think you were thinking about Marvel Knights with
Marvel Knights,
because they had Daredevil and Punisher and a few other things.
And if anybody's read those, they're like super dark, right?
Yeah,
they're darker, more violent.
Some of them they just put like comic book MA or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah, and they have some crazy shit going on there. And I really hope that they do that. So if I do go to the comic book store and I see that, I'll give it a shot. I'll give you a first issue shot, Marvel.
There you go.
But if you don't buy me dinner before we do the deed, then I won't be that happy, if you know what I mean. So
yeah.
No, I think you need to elaborate on the post dinner thing.
Well, all I'm saying is give me a chance to put my lipstick on. So, have you been watching any interesting films or TV shows or anything of that nature recently?
I have. I recently watched Evil Maker and Evil Maker 2, Joe Sherlock films.
John Bowker directed.
John Bowker directing and Joe Sherlock doing I was introduced to them through Joe Sherlock, so they stick through to my head. But John Bowker, freaking amazing. And those movies, I will say this: the first movie can totally tell that a man wrote the women's dialogue. Yeah,
I didn't hear that. All I saw was boobs.
Yeah, I know, and that's that's why it's like it's not really a big deal because there's a lot of boobs there, a lot of really awesome, sexy shots.
Yeah, could you elaborate actually, because that's intriguing. Because I have seen those films. Actually, I have a loan.
You let me borrow them.
Because I think John Bowker has this amazing sense of story when it comes to kind of blending and the mixing and the difference between dreams, reality, and what's the other world and stuff. But could you elaborate kind of, well, actually give the viewers kind of a little thing. What's the movie about? But kind of elaborate. What is the ear towards a woman's voice and all that?
Well, so I'll say this. So the movies are about this woman is going through some marital problems. So her friend says, let's go out to the coast, and the car breaks down and they go into this house and with these two other girls, and they start experiencing some, well, the dark girl, the gothic girl, she starts feeling like sensing that the house is in a way wicked and haunted. And there's and this is what I really like about John Bowker, is that he really sets up, like, it takes a little bit to get there, but he really sets up the details so that when the killings do come, they make sense. Like, they happen like that, but they make sense. And in the second one, it's a continuation of the story. Someone goes back to that house. I don't want to say why because I don't want to spoil the ending of the first one, but someone goes back to that. What was that?
You gotta go to skullfaceastronaut.com.
Yes.
And go purchase those DVDs, and or I think you can see them on Vimeo.
So once you do see the ending of the first one, you'll understand the second one, obviously, because it is really like directly correlated. It's like basically if you watch them back to back, it's like one long movie. One Marvel length movie, basically. It's 3 hours total. And like that first movie really also sets up the tone for the second movie. Now, what I meant by in the first movie, you can tell that it's man writing dialogue. It's already so difficult to write dialogue. You know, I've only been doing dialogue-based writing for a couple of years now. I haven't really been doing it for very long. I used to do a lot more like novel type stuff, short stories. So the dialogue has never really been the focus, but in this one I could kind of tell as a girl, but also in the way that the women interact with each other. Now I have to say, Taylor, the like short-haired girl that just got out of the nut house, she is the only one who is acting exactly how a girl in that situation would act, which is you're in a strange house with your buddies and there's a shit ton of free liquor. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna drink the liquor and boogie down. The other girls, yeah, they're like chatting and stuff, but I felt like she was the most genuine.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
He actually is my favorite character in those in that first movie, especially she has this love of food, and she doesn't care like what the food is and mashing
Yeah,
it.
just all one thing. It's all going in the same place.
Yeah, John's such like a terrific writer, and he does such an amazing job of world building. And then, so that's interesting that you're talking about, because apparently, I don't have that female ear, as it were, because I'm so manly and handsome and dashing and all that stuff.
Yeah, an Adonis, really.
Adonis.
Do go on.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah, I'm really glad that you like those films. I mean, I think at some point that we could kind of have a full, hour and a half episode just about those films alone. I think we should maybe talk to John, see if we can get him on here. That would be
absolutely. I would love to pick his brain.
Right? I've hung out with him a few times. I kind of like name drop. I'm like, hey, I know John. I know. And actually, every time I do see those guys, I kind of pick their brains about these things. But that would be really cool to have that like longer sort of thing. Okay, so yeah, you know what? That's wonderful. I think we've covered a few of the bases there. Let's go kind of into what we're here for. Happy 4th of July, everybody, and Terminator and all that stuff like that. Because when I think about 4th of July, I think about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I think about shooting the shit out of stuff.
I just realized your shirt has an American flag on it.
How
patriotic!
Okay. Before we really go into our topic, though, what I will tell you what I'm going to be doing for the 4th of July, and then I'm going to ask you what you're doing for the 4th of July.
All right.
Okay. 4th of July, every year, I have a bit of a tradition. Okay? I buy a 6-pack of something, not always White Claw, but this year it will be White Claw, and I pull out my old DVD of the Will Smith classic Independence Day, and I pop it in, right? And that is I sit there generally by myself, and I drink a 6-pack of something, and I watch Independence Day because I love aliens and I love shooting shit and action and all that stuff. And Will Smith is just awesome. So, and celebrating America and the world and everything like that, Independence Day, that's my tradition. What is your 4th of July tradition as a younger transplant, as it were, Mariana Chipoletta?
Well, because I was transplanted here, when I came over, my dad said we have to do everything we can to infiltrate the Americans.
Oh,
so
I knew it.
We started listening to jazz and went fishing. My
It
dad
all comes
grew
out.
a beard. Yeah. He grew a beard and he started fishing and listened to jazz. And so we try to be as American as possible. So my dad attempts to barbecue. He's pretty good. But here's the kicker, is that usually it's preceded by a bunch of Italian appetizers. And then we get into the American.
So, a big bowl of spaghetti. How American.
And then hot dogs.
Exactly. We have the little olives, the cheese, the crackers. All of that while we wait for our very American burgers to cook on the grill. Costco bought, obviously.
That sounds like a wonderful tradition. James!
So, like, as growing up in America, I got here when I was like 5, right? And we always knew as a Filipino family that 4th of July is Independence Day, right? I go to school and you learn about it. But then, like, as a family unit, you don't really I think it's just another excuse for us to get together, right? So we do like our own barbecues and stuff like that, but we often eat Filipino food anyway. Uh, I think like we have a weird uncle that will always buy like bootleg fireworks somewhere, and then he'll try to like oh look what I bought, and this is gonna be fun for the kids, and half of the family be like that's dangerous, and the other half would be like no, that's fun. They need to see this. So that's what my tradition is. But as I got older and I got more independent from my family, I kind of and as a gamer, I stereotypically try to play Call of Duty on the campaign mode, right? On the story mode, just because we don't negotiate with terrorists, and and we just want to. I just want to be more patriotic. I usually play Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. That's a specific game that I play all the time.
Can we play Call of Duty World War II on Saturday morning?
Yeah, that'll be totally fine. I think I actually have that. Yeah.
It was the June free game on PS.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, totally down for that. Yeah, for sure. I haven't even played it yet, so that's perfect.
Down for that. I have.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome, Joe.
That's pretty much it.
Oh, that's it. Okay, that's a great tradition, I think.
Yeah.
All right, Mariana. Well, you know what? I'll tell you for a moment. I think that before we go into everything, I'd really like to show everybody a little clip from the upcoming Specimen 6 film starring James Ong, and we're going to go into...
I don't know if it's starring, but...
Well, the clip is.
Oh, is it? Oh my God! I don't even know what is happening right now. So let's do it.
He doesn't know what's happening, so I'm going to show everybody right now because just here in a few weeks, we're going to be coming out with the DVD and the digital. Well, first the digital and then the DVD right after that of Specimen 6. And James shows up in the film, and he does a really wonderful job. He's in one of the shorts, and he's kind of the star of the short of sorts. And so I'm going to show you a scene that he's in that he does a great job, and I'm going to show you it right now.
Hey, how's it going? What can I get you? Nothing, thanks. Just hoping if I can get some directions.
Where are you looking to go?
The old campground at Lake LaQuinn.
Oh, you want to go out there? Nobody goes out there.
Well, we were hoping to get in some good fishing,
You ain't gonna catch nothing out there. They haven't stocked that lake in years.
We'll catch a tan then.
Hey, Ryan, you set to go yet or what?
Yeah, sorry. I was just chatting it up with the locals.
Oh, great. Did you ask them about the camp slings? Maybe we can get some interview footage for the website extras.
What'd you say about slangs?
We're making a podcast about the Camp Holyoke killings. We want to see if there's any more evidence that might be scrounged up to help give us a better understanding to the mystery behind the murders. I mean, nobody ever caught the person that did it.
Damn. I knew you city folk weren't coming out here just to fish for no fucking fish.
What's wrong? I would imagine the local community that were affected the most would want to know what really happened and who the murderer was.
We don't need no idiot city folk coming out here and stirring up a bee's nest. This community's had it bad enough recently.
Hey, let's just go. Sorry to bother you, sir.
What do you mean recently? The killings happened over 20 years ago.
He didn't mean nothing by it. Just head up that same road out there about 5 miles, and on your right will be a sign indicating where the lake is. Take that road, and it'll lead you all the way down to where the incident happened. You won't see no cabins or anything. They was all torn down after it all happened. The townsfolk didn't care to be reminded about all those poor kids dying.
Thanks. I appreciate the help.
But what about...
No, but just get. And don't be looking for any local commentary. No one's gonna talk to you.
Come on, Anna. Let's just go.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, I guess.
Why the hell did you go and do that?
Just let him go, Hank. Their own stupid fault if anything happens to them.
I've warned them. I've warned them all. They're doomed. All doomed.
Hey everybody, I really hope that you enjoyed that new clip. James was really amazing in that, and I can't wait for you guys to see the film. It's going to be on digital on Vimeo. It's going to be on DVD. Just hit me up over here as soon as I give you the go-ahead when the DVD hits over here as well. But please go to Vimeo, check it out. I've been working all year on this film. It means a lot to me for people to see. Mariana has joined me in some aspects of the filmmaking. If you've joined us over the last year, James acted in this. And Specimen 6 is kind of my big dream, my big homage to the slasher film, as it were. But here is what we want to talk about here today, our 4th of July special. We want to talk about the Terminator franchise. I love the Terminator franchise. I remember I used to rent the movie on VHS when I was a kid, and we would watch it all the time, the very first one. And then I remember it played on TV a lot, and every single time that it played on TV on the 3 channels that I had, because I'm an old man, we had 3 channels. I didn't have cable growing up. We were very, dirt poor, as it were. And so we'd have to, wrinkle the antenna and we're like, cool, Terminator's on. And so we'd watch that. And Terminator 2 ended up being a really big thing. I remember I was in the theater. My mother would take us to the theater a lot. And the first time I saw it, I can't remember what the movie was that I was sitting at, but the trailer, when it showed up, was you saw like the Terminator's foot coming down and like crushing the skull. And then you saw like Arnold like turn. He's like, I'm whatever he ends up saying. Remember that awesome classic trailer, James, when it showed up, like I'm back or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it was so cool. And I remember seeing T2 in the theater. It was this huge experience, probably the biggest like theatrical experience of my life. I'm dating myself very much because that was 1990 or 90, something like that. 91,
1992 probably.
I was born in 92.
I was sitting in a movie theater being like wide-eyed, like, okay, Sarah Connor's one of the most badass chicks I've ever seen in my life. Schwarzenegger's so cool in this. Yeah, Edward Furlong. James, could you tell us about your first impressions about Terminator, the franchise in itself?
Gotcha. So I watched Terminator 2 in a theater in the Philippines while on vacation there. Oh. And I was with my dad, and my mom was shopping, and my dad was like, we need to pass time. And then we snagged into a theater for a few hours and watched Terminator 2. And I was like probably 12, right? Or is it right around there? And so I'm going to be real. Terminator 2 was actually my first Terminator movie. And then after that, I rented Terminator 1, right? So I was a little confused when I first watched it. I was like, is that a bad guy? Is that a good guy? Oh, I get it now. I put the pieces together, right? Yeah. But the context, if you guys haven't seen Terminator yet, and I hope to God you have, already seen it, there's a big difference of watching the first one and the second one because of the way that it's written, right? But my first experience with Terminator 2 was naked Arnold teleporting into time, and I was like, man, that's a buff man, right? As a little kid, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I was kind of confused. I was like, okay, he's definitely super strong. Is he a hero? But he wasn't acting like your typical hero. So I was like, he's kind of mean. That's kind of awkward, right? And then I noticed that like he was like, you could see through his eyes, right? So okay, definitely he's not human. And it's called the Terminator. So he's looking to kill something, right? And then I remember thinking as a kid, I was like, they made a movie about a villain? That's really strange, And so I was like invested because I was like, it's so different, right? And then Sarah Connor shows up and she's actually the main protagonist of the first movie, right? And this one, she still is, and she carries the movie a lot. She carries the emotion actually in the movie, and like I didn't know anything what was happening, but the moment that they meet at the insane asylum. I think that was like, I was like, oh man, they've met somewhere before and she's afraid of him. So is he a bad guy? Like, and is she the good guy? I was still trying to figure it out. And I think as a person watching film, that's fantastic. When you're not sure what's happening, but you're still invested. Because a lot of the times you're like, oh, that's clearly the bad guy, right? And like, oh, it's so stereotypical that it's so obvious. But then you're watching and then he's like, come with me if you want to live. And I was like, what? What is going on? Like, I'm confused, my emotions. And then of course plot happens, the T-1000 shows up. Okay, now it's more clear that the plot's unraveling, right? And so after watching that movie, I was like, I gotta watch the first one. What happened in the first one? And so that kind of like that brought me back in, and it raised the bar a lot too. So and remember, I'm like 12, and I'm like, I'm supposed to be liking Ninja Turtles and like stuff like that, but I'm already invested in this like sci-fi futuristic like action movie. And I think like if you're a film director, James Cameron, right? And you've captured a kid's interest in that kind of stuff, and the kid's not afraid, but also like just like, I want to see more. This is so cool. I think you did a job pretty well. And as somebody that's dabbled in film, loves video games with a lot of writing and a lot of manpower that goes into that, that's super special. And I think that's something that clearly we're still talking about it 20, 30 years later, right? So I think that's super neat. So. And I'm excited to actually hear your guys' experience about this kind of stuff, and I'm just excited talking about it right now.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that Sarah Connor drives the emotion of the film, because I feel very much the same way. I feel like Sarah Connor really represents humanity in the movies, and especially in the first one where Mr. Schwarzy wants to go and kill her. It's like it's in a way like killing humanity by just picking that one target, right? So I feel very much the same way. Love James Cameron because of his directing. I also had lots of questions when watching Terminator. The way that I was introduced to Terminator is that every summer in Italy there is a marathon that happens, and it's called the Schwarzy Marathon. And it's Arnold Schwarzenegger movies all day.
I love it.
And that's actually how I started watching all of those movies. And then, of course, when I became a teenager and had hormones and stuff, I was like, that's a nice butt. So, you like boobs in movies. I like a nice butt.
To each their own. That's what I say. It's so interesting. I think we each have our own kind of like our own story, but it very meaningful when it comes to Terminator. And yours comes across the pond there too, so that's intriguing to me, Mariana. Same with yours, actually. So we're kind of in different countries as these things are happening, but they all have the same impact, and I think that shows like what a great film is. I think the first film is probably one of the best sci-fi thriller horror films. It's almost like a slasher film. You got this unstoppable beast going after these people, and it kills a whole lot of people along the way. And then you have that sweet ass moment where it gets all the flesh and all the stuff like burned off of it, and it's coming towards her and everything like that. And they go over into the Cyberdyne Systems building and everything like that, and such cool stuff happens. And then, of course, part 2 happens, one of the greatest action sci-fi films of all time, and it sets up this beautiful world. And then from that point on, I think myself, I was really excited. Everybody was excited for a T3 to happen. I remember like many years went by, we're like, when is T3 going to happen? Everybody wondered, when is T3 going to happen? And then it happened. And then it was slightly underwhelming. Before I say anything, James, what do you think about T3 Rise of the Machines?
I don't know, man. Like T2 raised the bar so high, so clearly like you had to elevate yourself, and with the T3 kind of like bring up the stakes, right? And I think every Terminator movie, 1 and 2, let's just go with that one because there's so many, has a special moment where you're like, what is happening? And then it slaps you in the face like this is the reality of it, and you're like, what you thought was wrong, you know. And so I felt like as you create more Terminator movies, you have to be surprised in a different way. And I think a lot of the spirits of the other movies that came out after that did that, but I don't know. Like I remember, and underwhelming is actually the best thing, the best word you can use for it, because I was just like, is this it? Like that was it. Like it just didn't have that same impact. You know, maybe I'm just more diluted in media, right? As I was older, but I felt like it just didn't do enough justice to that level from T1 to T2. So T2 and T3, the level's even higher.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was either lower or at par, where I wasn't wowed. I was just kind of like, that new Terminator is kind of cool, right? But there's no, I don't know. It was just like, I felt like there was, there you go, underwhelming. It's the best thing I can think of, you know?
Yeah.
I will say Kristana Lockett is fucking hot. So that was the saving grace. I went out and bought a red leather jacket after that movie.
Kristana Lockett, I think actually deserves a lot of I think she kind of held the film together a bit, because there was so much about the film that kind of fell away. But she delivered this amazing new Terminator experience, right? She had that Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of a dedication, passion towards killing, as it were. She played the TX. She was the steppy on the T1000, so she was a mix between a T800 and a T1000. And she did such cool things. The action that besides the fact that she's freaking beautiful, she's actually she gives this performance, and people think, oh, well, you can't, it doesn't take much to do this blank stare sort of thing, but actually
it does.
It's pretty hard.
An amazing job. She's done some kind of other films. She worked with Uwe Ball a couple times that has much maligned, but I enjoy Uwe Ball films. She was in what was it? It was a oh gosh, I can't even remember at this particular moment. But she's been in other films, but nothing as big as this. And I think she did a great job. She kind of carried T3 for me. And I think that despite everything that kind of fell apart for the movie, Claire Danes, Nick Stahl, their performances are okay, but the story just kind of it was kind of the first step in the franchise that you knew things were going wrong. So T2 and T1, T2, things were amazing. And T3, you think, ooh, it stumbled. It stumbled kind of hard. There were some cool things, but that is not John Connor. That is not where I was hoping things would go,
And I think that's exactly why it was underwhelming for me, because I had this picture that I kind of set in my brain as expectation. And then I got what I got, right? And I was like, oh, this is not exactly what I thought T3 would be, because I was so impressed with the first two. And I think that's where I was just like, I don't know, underwhelming. That's all I can think of.
Yeah. Mariana, you saw T3. You thought she was beautiful. I thought she was beautiful. I thought she did a great job. I thought there was good things about it. But overall, let's say that we give it our horror movie 5 machetes. What would you give T3?
T3, I think I'd give it a 2.
A 2? Oh,
yeah, because
2.
I guess on a large scale, I would give it closer to a 3. But when we're comparing it to T1 and T2, I think a 2. 2 machetes.
Wow, 2 machetes. I would give it 2.5 machetes.
All right, give it a little half more.
I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt, but mostly because because she was so good in that film, and I think the action, as dated as it shows now, is still pretty good. James, if you could give something a that give T3 a rating of 5 machetes, how many machetes would you give T3 if we're talking about the whole franchise?
Yeah, I was gonna say like if T2 was my apex, right, 5, right, I'd say T3 is pretty is 2.5. Like I'd say 2, if anything. It's probably the weakest entry out of all the Terminators that I've
Really
seen.
think so? Okay,
Yeah.
I think it's because it was like it felt forced. Like people were waiting for T3, so they're like, you know what? Let's just put it out there. And then they tried a little bit harder with the other ones.
So I'll be straightforward. Okay, so Mariana, your backdrop is what I thought T3 was gonna be.
No,
Yeah,
Right?
isn't that amazing?
Right?
Yeah.
Because like I thought, to be honest, like I thought the T3 was gonna be they even though they saved John, like it didn't affect the future. So it's gonna be like how they struggle in the future. And then they released Terminator Salvation, and I think that's where we're gonna go next.
So yeah, that's a good segue into Terminator Salvation, Terminator 4. I can tell you, starting out, my feelings and thoughts about that. So I remember I was sitting in the theater with a past girlfriend, and that I didn't watch a lot of TV back then. I didn't even go on the internet a lot during that time. I know this seems kind of weird to a lot of people because I was only like, I don't know, mid 2000s or 2 aughts, whatever they call it. And I just didn't. I didn't really like start picking up the internet until maybe 2006, 2007, a little bit. And so I'm an old fashioned sort of guy. So we were sitting in the theater, and all of a sudden I started hearing that da-dum, da-dum, music. And then there was this trailer, this short little trailer. And I was like, holy shit, there's a new Terminator. And I was freaking out, right? Because
Yeah.
as much as like I wasn't that crazy about T3, I thought maybe they'll reinvigorate, maybe they'll change things. And so I was very excited. So every time there's a Terminator trailer or something, I get excited. So I go in, however many months later, and I go and I see Terminator Salvation in the theater, and I think it delivers some pretty interesting things. What I think is the T800s kind of show up a little bit. We get introduced to Kyle Reese as a much younger Kyle Reese. We get introduced to John Connor, that we see the beginning of their relationship. There's this whole thing with the prisoner that from the past that shows up in the future, and he's like, oh, what am I doing in the I don't want to give away too much if people haven't seen it, but Helena Bonham Carter's there. We learned some really interesting things, I think, about like the T500s, I think they are, where it was basically just the endoskeleton kind of covered with the fake flesh or whatever that they talk about in the original. And so you see them right off the bat. And so you get these glimpses. I think technically the story was done semi-well. There were some good character moments. It kind of gave us some of what the future was, but it seemed to be lacking in a lot of ways. Christian Bale was pretty good. I was really excited to see Christian Bale because he had kind of like grown big from Batman Begins, and you're like, oh fuck yeah, he's gonna be a great John Connor. But then the movie itself, there was something kind of murky about it. Even in certain scenes, it was really dark, where you couldn't even see what was going on in the scene itself. And sitting in the theater, I was like, what is going on here? I can't see what's going on here. And something was missing from it. So, James, tell us your perspective about Terminator Salvation.
I think Salvation was probably made up for Terminator 3 in my book.
Yeah. Definitely
because,
better than Terminator 3. I'll give you that much. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of future fights, kind of exactly what I was looking for T3. Salvation showed me how brutal it was to fight Skynet. And I think that was what I was really craving, when I see that T800 behind Mariana, and how like incredibly fragile humans are. Right, we're fighting like these death machines, and it takes a lot for us to like take one down, where they can just shoot us in one shot dead. And I think that's like one of the scarier parts of the movie, and how they were trying to display that as the battle between the two. Skynet versus humans. But I think the weakest portion of it, and I think one of the greatest portions of it, as a person that's gaming all the time, you don't have. It takes like movies, like 3 hours to tell you the whole narrative. Right?
Yeah.
Gaming typically with a storyline is about 20 to 30 hours.
Yeah.
Or if it's really short, 8. And to me, the movie felt more like a video game. It was being told as like a video. You're the Terminator. You're an advanced version of an infiltration, right? You're like supposed to be like undetectable. Like you're supposed to be showing up as a human, right? And of course, I think a lot of the themes in Terminator is about humanity, like the way what separates a man and a machine. That's always a common thing, right? And this person didn't even know he was a machine until later, and that was the shock. Remember, every Terminator has a shock. I'm talking about, right? Oh, Arnie's the good guy in this one. And this one, the guy was like, "Oh my god, I'm a Terminator! I didn't know that." But clearly they gave hints of this in the trailers because they always spoil everything. But this was that moment. There's that portion, that checklist of Terminator movies. I think where it becomes more video gamey was the mission was to destroy Skynet, right? Like they had and then Skynet's this big factory that's that's producing Terminators, and you have to destroy it and save the world. And I think that kind of was the drive for that movie. That was their goal, but they try to insert this like subplot of like what it means to be human. And yeah. And I think that's where like they lost their focus. Like there was 2 plots happening, and they were fighting for attention. Right? They're like, oh, this the humanity of a Terminator. What does it mean to be a Terminator, human? And then there's the whole like fight for Skynet, fight for human, lives. And I think they were battling each other in the movie because they were like forcing it. Like, which one am I focusing on now? And I think that's where I was kind of like, this doesn't get a 5 out of 5. And there was a lot more moments in there where where's Sarah Connor in this movie, or the version of Sarah. And I think it was that the female lead, right? It was like her name was Moon or something like that.
Moon.
Yeah.
Moon Blood something or other.
Yeah. And I think that was the Sarah Connor of this movie, but it didn't really hit me immediately. Watch that. Yeah. So Sarah Connor's a legacy character. That's a really big shoes to fill. But I think in the end, ultimately, what got this movie messed up was what was their focus, right? They were trying to do a little bit too much of everything. If they stuck with the whole like the horrific battle of the future, and this is like our last fight, we don't have a backup plan after this, right? And they focused on that. I think it would have been a great thriller horror action movie. But since they added like that little subplot about like, oh, this Terminator's human, oh, is it a machine? I think it confused a lot of people because now instead of like you're thinking Terminators are evil and we need to defeat them, we have this one Terminator that's different. So now we have to empathize with the Terminator, right? Like maybe we can convert them to become more human. And I was like, that seems unnecessary, or at least focus on. And that's kind of where Salvation, I think, falls apart. There's no real focus. I don't know. What do you get?
No, I think that kind of hits the nail on the head, and I hadn't really thought about that because it always been kind of like this mysterious thing. It's like, what? Because I've seen the movie many times. I have even the director's cut, which gives you a few more seconds, Yeah. I'm like, there's something off about. I think you hit the nail on the head where it kind of like it does. It tries to give 2 different storylines too much time. Like focus on one, but they are competing. But that whole human versus like not human, it doesn't work in the Terminator franchise. And that starts from the very beginning, the very first one, where Kyle Reese is trying to convince Sarah Connor in the very first movie, like, these things are unstoppable. They will kill you. They don't care about you. They don't have any heart. And then in Terminator Salvation, they're like, well, maybe they're kind of sweet. Maybe we can change them a little bit. It's like, well, no, that's not the way that androids or cyborgs work with their programming. This is kind of sci-fi 101, whether you're talking about positronic brains, you're talking about iRobot. Like programming is programming. They don't learn what a human emotion is. Mariana Chipoletta?
Joseph Oakley.
Before I give, well, actually, I would give Terminator Salvation myself. I would give it, out of 5 machetes, I'd give it like a 3.8, and then I'm gonna splice some hairs there. So that's what I'm giving it. You saw Terminator Salvation?
Yeah.
Yes. Give us kind of your opinion about that film.
So I agree with both of you, and so I'll just say this about it. That same year, I think, is the same year the second Transformers movie came out, and it had very much the same problem of moving the camera around in the dark too much, to the point where I couldn't understand anymore what was happening. And I was very in the theater, I was very much focused on that because it's big, it's right there, right? When I did rewatch it later, the story, it moves. But that's about it. It like it's just, it kind of fits a formula, you know. I didn't really care for the whole, I mean, I like the idea of having maybe a separate, like completely different world where there are these big questions about like people who maybe have converted body parts into, like, kind of like RoboCop, right, where you still have that human element. So in that universe, that concept applies. But I think in the movie, I agree with you guys, it was very much displaced, causing it to, I'll match Joe's rating of 3.8.
I love that you brought up RoboCop, because I do love the RoboCop films, and that is what makes RoboCop kind of elevated. Is like you have the human stuck inside the machine, you know, and that human starts to come out. But if you're just talking about the cyborg created by like other, you know, technologies and internets and things like that, that doesn't mean it's an old man talking about the about the webs and stuff. But really, like if you're talking about pure technology, pure robots, everything like that, why are you projecting these human characteristics into them? Right? RoboCop works because you have a human inside the robot.
Yeah.
You have a literal cyborg. Over here, we're talking about androids. We're not talking about, you know, emotions and stuff. Why are we projecting that into a Terminator? I think that's starting to leak a little bit from Terminator 3. Maybe it really started in part 2, where you want the Terminator to be human, but he really is not. And then Terminator 3 is starting to build a little more, well, he's protecting even more and stuff like that. And then
but I think that's where the fundamental difference is that in 2, you want them to be more human. So you know that it's something that can't happen. So you have this like desire of, you know, they're capable of doing more human things, but they're not doing it with a human intent, right? So, but in Terminator 4, you just have this actual like intentional humanization of the machine.
Yeah. And it's like it's pushed, it's forced. Like, why are you trying to humanize what kind of is a cool thing about this franchise? It's like it's a killing machine. Stop trying to make it human.
From what I noticed is that, you know, we were talking about the T-500, where it was a very rough version of Arnold's Terminator, right? And then because Arnold's Terminator is the infiltration unit,
Yeah,
right? They want to. The whole point, I think, the topic of that movie was they were trying to send Terminators into that underground base to take them out internally, and so they made Sam to like Skynet made Sam to be like, okay, this is the Terminator that can do that because it can bypass all their detectives.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the idea of Sam is cool. Like
yeah.
Right. But like they've went too much on that direction.
Far with it.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, let's just make him a really complex Terminator like the T-1000. Right. But like, I think what they did is it almost Skynet's plan backfired on him, because since they made him too human, and he was like, oh, I'm human now. I'm not a Terminator. So I'm gonna go against.
I'm a real boy.
Yeah, it was like a Pinocchio thing, right? And I think like if they wrote the story more focusing on that and not really like the stake of the world, it would have been a different movie, and it would have been adjusted a little bit better, the focus on it. But since it was kind of just added in there, it's just a little bit more difficult to follow, just because like, okay, well now we're focusing on his humanity or the big war that's happening.
Yeah.
And I think it watered down both of them. And that's kind of where it falls.
I think so. It should have focused on one or the other. Well, personally, I would have preferred the war itself because it does for 3 freaking movies. And then it was just like, let's talk about our feelings for a bit.
Wow.
Well, because the thing is, like, he wasn't programmed, right, to take down humans, because that was the trick, is to make him more human so he could infiltrate. And I guess Skynet didn't consider the fact that it might go rogue on them.
Yeah. That's great. So I think before we start going, I wanted to take a little bit of break here because I want to show people, because really we got this new movie coming out called Specimen 6 that James is in. And I want to, actually, I'm not going to show you another clip about James. I'm going to show you another clip about somebody else because I want to tease you guys, because that's really, one of those things. While I'm here, I'm a filmmaker. I want to show you some of my good stuff here. I'm just going to show you this little cool clip. So I really hope you enjoy this. And remember, look out for Specimen 6 coming out in a few weeks here on digital. And please rent it. It's going to be a great job. Okay, I think. Something like that. I don't know. And then we'll talk more Terminator. Happy 4th of July, folks. Okay, bye.
It was really sucks that they tore down all those cabins. I was hoping to get some extra photos for the website.
Yeah, there has to be some traces of human presence around here, even if it was 20 years ago. Names in a tree. There's always horned up counselors around these things.
Hey! Hey, Anna!
Maybe. Maybe not.
It's me, Nancy!
Let's go for a hike and explore. We can work out some of the kinks in the narrative along the way.
Anna, where are you going? Despite the locals' best efforts to cover up any and all evidence of the terrible tragedy that befell this community, the voices of the murdered innocent still cry out to be heard. Here, along this overgrown trailhead, a sign from the past still exists to guide any lost soul who might be wandering where. You killed them, didn't you? Who are you?
Hey, everybody, I really hope that you enjoyed that last little scene that I give you a little snippet about Specimen 6. I'm really excited that everybody's going to see that. Mariana and I also have some more things coming up. We're going to be filming later on this summer. She's working on this script that I'm really enjoying so far. I think your guys are going to enjoy it. But that's further in the future. Please join us for Specimen 6 coming up very soon. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the Terminator franchise coming up. I know we've had a longer episode, but Terminator means a lot to me. And it means a lot to everybody. It's a very American thing. I don't know why it's an American thing. It just simply is. You know, I think it's a world thing. It's a human thing, I think, because, like, the movies kind of focus so much on, like, the human experience in a good way, but also just, like, on the shared wondrousness, that's not a word, but of what sci-fi means to everybody and how it kind of brings everybody together. So we are going to talk about a much maligned, much controversial film, and that is the most no, we're still talking about Terminator Genesis. So we want to talk about actually, well, Terminator.
You wanted to skip Genesis?
Terminator Genesis was much maligned. I enjoyed it. I own the DVD, the Blu-ray, actually. I saw it in the theater. It is a flawed film like the other sequels were. So in my opinion, what they tried to do with the new Terminator Genesis was they tried to do this kind of reboot. It was like a soft reset reboot sort of thing where we're still in the same universe. The Kyle Reese of the future, which is played by um, Jai Courtney. I don't know. I think he's Australian or something like that. Um, I, I'm not that crazy about this actor. I think he does some interesting stuff in. I mean, Suicide Squad. I didn't care for. I think he has some range that is not shown that he is been able to show thus far in his career. Maybe I'm missing a movie or two here or there, but anyway, he plays a Kyle Reese, but he plays kind of this like soft Kyle Reese, not as battle worn as the kick-ass Michael Biehn sort of Kyle Reese. And he's like, I love Sarah Connor so much. I want to go visit Sarah Connor in the past and be her lover, husband, person. And then he gets sent back, and it turns out that Sarah Connor's already a badass, and she's there to save him. And all this stuff happens where Arnold Schwarzenegger is a sweetheart that has already been back there and helped Sarah Connor and said like, they called me Pops, and Sarah Connor is like my daughter and stuff like that. And I enjoyed the film. I did, but I thought it was a pretty decent story. And by that point, by After Salvation, I was like, I just want some Terminator. I don't care what's going to happen. I just want some good sci-fi and stuff like that. I ended up enjoying it, but it was very flawed in many ways. James, tell us about Genesis, your opinion of Genesis.
Oh boy. Okay, so I'm probably one of the few people that along with you enjoyed the movie, right? But it's not without its problems.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's a soft reboot excused the idea that the characters were the way they were, right?
Right. Yeah. So they gave you that little bit of a suspension.
And here's the thing, though: any movie or any narrative or series that talks about time, this was bound to happen because time is the biggest plot armor that any writer can create, right? What if, right? And this is the Terminator. What if, And I think they were smart to say this is going to be an alternate timeline because when John Connor got saved, it changed time and put it in many different directions, right? And this is the what if of this series. And I like the whole like Daddy-nator thing with like young Sarah Connor being protected by Arnold. By the way, she is a tough Sarah Connor. Even
Emilia Clarke,
teenager.
I think she's amazing Sarah Connor. I really do.
Yeah, fantastic. And I don't know if it was on purpose, but when did this come out? I think 2009, right around there. No, 2015. Yeah. This is kind of the time where in the media, and this might have been just coincidence, where they were focusing a lot on female protagonists, right? And I think that was a big conversation topic at the time. And that was even in the gaming world, they consistently always talk about strong female protagonists. So it almost felt like to a lot of people this movie was forced and pandering, right? And I was like, have you guys seen the other ones? It's been out since the 80s. Like it's always had a strong female role.
I feel like it was pandering towards that kind of girl power sort of thing. I really didn't, because I think Sarah Connor in this was actually kind of one of the stronger characters.
Right.
One of the better written ones.
And I think if you've seen the series, it's normal to us, normalized. Right?
Yeah.
But if you're like new to the series and the turn of events are happening, you feel like this is like it's kind of like neck to neck with it. And I think a lot of my friends thought that too, and they kind of brushed off the movie like, oh, it's pandering too. But I defended the movie, going, well, have you seen the other one? Been out since the 80s. There's always been a strong female lead. Sarah Connor's awesome. But anyway, kind of like going past the politics of that. As far as the way it is, where it is in the universe of Terminator, I think this Genesis was really, to me, the middle section, right? It can go in different directions to where depending on what happens, and it wasn't really. This was like the first one where John Connor wasn't really like the savior of humanity, right? So that changed the plot a little bit, and they kind of rewrote some stuff where they're like, "Oh, Sarah's the key to the future, not John," And so it's to me, it was a shocker. Like, oh man, they're just rewriting everything now. This is a lot of information to take in. But as far as in the visual spectrum and the way the movie carried itself, um, you're right. Michael Biehn is kind of a putz in this movie. Like,
well, Kyle Reese is in this. Yeah, Michael.
Oh yeah, Kyle Reese. Yeah,
Michael Biehn
yeah,
was this badass soul.
yeah, exactly. And I was just like, this is sad. Like, and I think that's why a lot of my friends that seen the movies before thought it was pandering because they turned this awesome future soldier man into this wimpy dude.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, but they didn't realize like Sarah Connor was the key. It wasn't John Connor anymore, so she had to be strong. And it's kind of funny because the movie carries Terminator in its title.
Yeah.
But Arnold always seems to be the second, like a supporting character in these movies indirectly. And by the way, like I think this is one of those moments too where we have our Terminator checklist. Where's the shocking part, right? Where's the part that goes, oh, that's what they were trying to show us? I think once again they did a good job with presenting Arnold of who he was. What's his role in the movie, and I think that was like, oh, that's super neat. Like, I think that's really cool that they took this direction with Arnold instead of just being like a super cold killing machine. They got reprogrammed. Now he's like a bodyguard. I thought that was
because by then he'd done Kindergarten Cop, and those really
right.
helped him feel.
Yeah, and it's weird because like Terminator is such a static character because it's a character that's just a robot, right? And but remember in T2 he says he's a learning computer, right?
Yeah.
His CPU is a learning computer. So I think like if you're really into Terminator, you can be like, okay, I get it how he's developed father. But like if you didn't know that backstory and if you weren't into the lore of Terminator, you'd be like, what the heck is this thing? Like it's supposed to be killing them. So as a reboot, it gets I'm gonna just jump to it. It's 4 out of 5 for me, right? Big fan of Emilia Clarke. I think the weak points of the movie is really like the twist that they were trying to do where, oh snap, John Connor's the Terminator.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah, I think there was some pretty cool action in the film that was happening on the bridge near the end and things of that nature. I agree with you. I mean, there's some very strong. The strong points were very strong, but there was I'd give it 4 out of 5 machetes. I think there was still something missing, but I think that's because the story was still kind of trying to find its footing.
And to be honest with you, like you brought it up a little bit before when you were talking about the cast. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't know really half the people in this movie because I didn't really watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I didn't know who was playing Kyle Reese. I didn't even know who was playing John Connor. I was like, who's this guy? I've seen him before, but
really,
but
who was he?
Yeah, who was he? Right? And it's like you have such an important character like John Connor, you got to know who that person is.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's going to be the Terminator of that movie, I feel like you're going to need somebody that's a little bit more like, to me, like he didn't look intimidating.
No.
Right? So you need that presence. I think that's the best thing is that presence where, I mean, Arnold's super intimidating. He has a cold face, super buff. This guy was just like normal dude. And I was like, okay, it's not really that threatening except when he's in a robot, right? So
that's kind of like when Ben Affleck played Batman.
We'll get to that, but like I actually enjoyed Ben Affleck as Batman.
I did too.
It's okay.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that another day.
Yeah, another time. That's opening another can of worms.
But as far as Terminator Genesis goes, what were your impressions of this film?
So I really enjoy what ifs, and I do see the that going wrong sometimes, where the what if is used as a way of explaining things without putting much effort into it. I feel like they did a really good job in this one, kind of like mirroring the first one, which is I think why I would give it. I think I'm gonna go a little higher on this one, 4.5 for me,
Alright.
because it kind of like revived my joy for Terminator at that point.
I'd agree with you with that one because I think Terminator Genesis did a pretty good job of like that soft reboot thing, but keeping you interested. Like, hey, here's this really good Sarah Connor, and I thought she did a great job. Emilia Clarke. I was like, oh, this is intriguing, and it did have that kind of like, oh, let's reverse things. However, Kyle Reese is a battle-hardened PTSD fucking badass soldier of the future. And Jai Courtney did not come across as any of those things. He seemed like I said earlier, he's like, I have feelings and I love her and I'm kind of pretty looking and stuff.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work for me.
But I think if they, so I agree, and I didn't really care for his character in this one, but I think if you're going to do something like this where everyone's roles are kind of flopped, then it makes sense to also flop his. You might not like it, but to keep it, I guess, in a sense, symmetrical without making it seem like you're picking and choosing. Yeah, but on a story, in a character sense, like he's the one character that didn't have any development in that movie, I think.
He just seemed blah. But that actor seemed blah to me. Like Sarah Connor's character makes sense why she would be badass. Because they give that whole backstory about how her parents were now killed from the other Terminator and that Terminator saved her and all that stuff like that. So she was all like, okay, well, that makes sense. But it didn't make any sense for Kyle Reese to suddenly have the same backstory and all that, but kind of be, I don't know, not as cool in my book.
To me, like,
bitch.
like yeah, Sarah Connor really carried that movie because like they were prepared for that to come at that time.
Did Sarah Connor carry that Genesis? No, I think, in my opinion, the story was better. The story was better than the parts itself, I think. And I think that's what, in the elements and how it looked, those things worked. Emilia Clarke did a great job. Certain people did a good job. Overall, I think the story carried it. I don't think that the characters did.
Okay. I wanted to marry Emilia Clarke after that movie. I don't know.
Right? No, she's gorgeous. She did a great job.
Badass chick with a shotgun.
Yeah. She did a wonderful job. She did service to it. But I think overall the story was actually pretty darn good. But the elements building that story together just didn't quite work. So I give it up to the writers. I do. A lot of people malign the story, but I would say that's what kind of kept it together. They tried to, homage the original, the spirit of the Terminators with how they did things. And there was just certain things that didn't work. But it wasn't the writing. And in my opinion, I would give it, what did I give it before? I give it 4 out of 5. But that's because the parts failed the whole, and but only in certain ways. But leading up out of that, we're gonna move into Dark Fate, Terminator Dark Fate, the most recent one. Boy, I'll tell you what, there's a lot to unpack in this one. Terminator Dark Fate kind of retcons everything that came before it because Genesis didn't do well financially or critically. And so they're like, how do we keep this thing going? And so it was like, well, let's retcon everything going back from part 2, from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 don't exist. So let's just go all the way back, and so much stuff happens there. So personally, I'm gonna just hand it off to James first, and then
Why?
I'm sorry, I have so much feelings and emotions about this one. I got to hand it off to you first. And the thing is, why I brought you onto this particular episode as I did was because I knew you enjoyed this film more than I did. And so I was like, I have all these emotions. I don't know what to do with these emotions. And I needed somebody to play off of that. Mariana Chipoletta.
Yes.
You've seen the newest one? Have you seen the newest one? Okay.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Wow. All right.
This is why I brought James on here.
Oh my goodness. I gotta defend this film? Okay.
Defend. Okay, so before we do all this, James does such a wonderful job of presenting the film and his opinion of why a film works. And I think he's done an amazing job, and we've done such a interesting build up with all these other films, and we're building up to Dark Fate right now. So James, please tell us, why did you like Dark Fate?
Why?
So I'm gonna add right away, it is a true sequel to T2. That is like that is really the main attachment that I have to that, but it's the way they did it. And I get it. I feel like it's unfair that T3, Salvation, and Genesis are kind of just like thrown out the window, and this is the real sequel to it. But like I said, when you're writing movies about time, it doesn't matter because this is the thing where this movie, what is the true sequel to the T2? Because this one, John gets killed like soon after the events of T2, right? And it's like they won. That's it, right? That there's the future's ended, and to me, I was like, wow, that's pretty dark, because it shows like another model going to kill John Connor, and he does his mission, and I was like, wow, this is what it's like if the Terminator did win. So to me, that was like a good thing already. That was another what if, right? But it also still carried the spirit of T2. It still continued the story, and I was kind of like, I felt a little bit hopeless after that. I think it's because I was still writing on the events of T2. And I was like, okay, John Connor's dead. Future humanity is done. And I think that emotion carried to Sarah Connor, where she felt hopeless because John's dead, right? She's like, doesn't matter anymore. We lost, right? And so they threw in like a second chance at him by this future future lady that's come, their version of Kyle Reese in this movie. I forgot what was the name of Grace. She was like the altered human soldier that's sent back to protect the new Sarah.
Mackenzie Davis, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, as far as visuals, I liked it. First of all, the new Terminator is scary as shit.
Yeah,
like,
the Rev 9, I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I have the Rev 9 behind me right now in my backdrop here, and it's a mixture of pretty much a T1000 and the T800, right? Yeah. But to a new level. Like, there's a part in the movie where they show scenes from the future, and I'm not sure if you caught this, but imagine a Terminator and a Xenomorph combined in the design, where a Terminator has tentacles coming out of it and it can slice you in half. When I saw that future scene, I was like, those things are scary, and they don't die in one shot. They're metal. Right? So you have to have lots of firepower to take one down, and one Terminator can kill a whole platoon of soldiers if it's angry. And so that's what's scary about that. That's always been the scarier thing in Salvation that I talked about earlier, where it's so hard to kill Terminators, right? Because we're so fragile as humans. But now imagine turning a Terminator into a Xenomorph, and that's horrific. And I remember leaving the theater going, I hope to God they don't make a Xenomorph Terminator in real life. That is scary. I don't want that at all. But going back to the movie and its focus, I think this was a fan service to people that love Terminator 2. They really wanted more Arnold, but like in the way that they remembered him from Terminator 2, right? The same model, same Terminator, but they came back to that. I think where the movie goes back again to where it falls off is the whole humanity thing. Right? Where like I learned to be a husband in this movie and a father. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Like that's the part where I was like, okay, so he's just like a real dad now,
Yeah.
like his bio, and she didn't notice this whole time, you know, like, and that's where I was kind of like, your wife just didn't notice, you didn't eat, didn't sleep. Like,
Yeah, and they
so
explain away the whole thing where he weighs like what 1,000 pounds.
yeah, exactly. So that's the part where I was like, that makes no sense.
It's like, yeah.
and I think when I think one of the narratives in the movie was, it doesn't matter if John survived, because Judgment Day will happen regardless. I think I heard that somewhere in there. So it's almost like inevitable that they're defending this girl from the future to save the future, right? But they're doing it anyway. That's the best part about that, is because even though the future's lost, we're gonna do it anyway because we don't want them to get away with what they want to do, right? And even like, Grace, you know, in the and I feel like that struggle was like, wow, it's a losing battle, right? But they're gonna do it anyway because it provides hope, right? And I think that's where like the humanism of the characters really shine, is that no matter how dark our fate is, right, we're gonna go down fighting no matter what, you know, because we want that glimmer of hope. And I think that's why the movie to me really shined. The combination of fan service to Terminator 2, um, and then kind of like, it is technically almost a soft reboot. It's removing key points and characters from the original movies and shifting the responsibility to this new person. And to me, that was like, it wasn't special, but I was like, I think to me, I accept it as Terminator 3. Like that was kind of like, it's acceptable. I take that as that. But I give respect to the other movies too. But like, giving the movie in its narrative how everything's about time, I think those other movies still exist in the universe, and they shouldn't retcon them. They should say, hey, if John dies, this is the path that it takes, salvation, right? Yeah. If John survives or whatever, it goes to Genesis. Kind of like The Legend of Zelda. I don't know if you guys played The Legend of Zelda.
Just the first game when I was a kid back in the 80s.
Okay. So I don't want to rant on too long, but this is how it jumps onto the video game concept of The Legend of Zelda, is because in the Ocarina of Time, you guys know that one, in 64, mm-hmm. The Zelda universe actually splits into many different directions depending on what happens in the game. So, for example, the game that you played as a kid on Legend of Zelda on the Nintendo is actually a result that happens in the future if Ganon had killed Link in Ocarina of Time. Right? Because Link resurrects himself every centuries as the new hero and then fights Ganon, right? So if Link had won in Ocarina of Time, it goes to Majora's Mask, right? So to me, the Terminator movies are kind of like the same pattern that the Zelda games are happening. If John Connor survives, if Sarah Connor dies, if, you know, Skynet wins, it all goes to these different paths. That's why they shouldn't retcon any of these movies. They should just say, hey, this is the convex where whatever happens in T2 depends what movie you get next or path you follow. So, and that's kind of like why I don't like, oh, I hate that movie or I do this. It's really just because since you're talking about a movie about time and the big focus is about time travel, you can have that. You can have all of that, right? And just depending on the series of events and what happens, it can lead to that specific path or movie. So, you never thought about it that way, did you?
No, I didn't. I think you kind of make me want to revisit the movie in a different way, putting it into that sort of perspective.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about the Zelda games too, they're not linear, right? Even if you play Zelda 1, Zelda 2, the 64 one, they don't happen one after the other. They actually change depending on the results of the Ocarina of Time game. So in a way, Ocarina of Time could be Terminator Genesis, right? So or Terminator 2 actually, right? That's where things tend to happen, and that's kind of where everything goes in different directions. All these different Terminator movies happen after, right? And Dark Fate could be the linear one, but it doesn't mean the others don't exist, you know, in harmony with Terminator 2. It just really depends on the result of what happens.
No, that's fascinating because, I mean, if we're talking about the Terminator films, we're talking about the different time splits. And I was thinking about this earlier when I was kind of taking notes about things and kind of like because my original idea was like, how do you fix things or how do you change things? How do you move the Terminator franchise along from this point? It was because of the alternate timeline things. But the way that you put it is like, this movie's actually better than it seems to be because of that, because the alternate timeline things. And there are things about Terminator Dark Fate that I enjoyed. I think I really enjoy the designs like behind you. The Rev 9 looked really cool. He was really cool. Gabriel Luna was really cool as the Rev 9, who he also played Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show, and I thought he was badass in that. And so when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, dude, that's freaking Ghost Rider. That's going to be freaking cool. And he was technically, but there's a lot of things about this film that I didn't care for, like, despite all the changes in the time and everything like that. Like, the very beginning, it has this whole thing where the T-800 shows up and just kills John Connor right off the bat. I felt like, despite all the other movies, which I give a lot of leeway to, that this was basically pissing all over 1 and 2 by saying all that stuff that you cared about in 1 and 2, and that you thought Sarah Connor, Kyle Reese, and John Connor being the Holy Trinity, everything revolves around them. All of a sudden, you're just going to just shoot it. You're just gone. He's gone. And from that point on, I was like, okay, I'm going to try not to hate it too hard because of that. But then, like, the rest of the film just kind of reiterates that. But Mackenzie Davis was a very cool augmented soldier, very cool concepts, sci-fi, very cool concepts. Things happen where I really enjoyed certain things about Dark Fate, but it kept feeling like we don't give a shit about the past except what we're giving you right now. But now that you put things in that perspective, it kind of gives me this other perspective about the film. I'll give it another shot. I still can't say that I enjoyed it. This is probably my least favorite in the Terminator franchise. 2 out of 5 machetes, I would give it. But now that you say that, it's kind of like putting that extra little half machete because James gave it a little bit of nudity for me, a little nudity for thought, as I like to think about things. And Mariana Chipoletta.
Yes, Joseph Oakley.
Break down your impressions of Terminator Dark Fate. I think we're still there. My heart's still broken over Dark Fate. And then I want to kind of go into the future. What can we do to fix Terminator? But first, tell me about Terminator Dark Fate, your impressions.
Well, my thoughts on it were that I didn't enjoy it for only one reason.
Only one?
One reason.
Well,
she loves boobs.
The main reason. But I'll preface with saying that the Rev 9 is my favorite.
He's cool, right?
He is freaking awesome. For 2 reasons. One, it looks cool.
Yeah.
For 2, it's that character's version of like upgrading through the movies. And so I feel like they reached a real like a solid type of Terminator with the Rev 9. That being said, I did not like the half human, half droid thing.
Oh, the Mackenzie?
Yeah, going back to the fact that like this isn't RoboCop. This is Terminator. These are created to be these killing machines.
But Greg out as a human, and then she was augmented, so she's not.
Yeah. So I know, but like that. But that's not what this franchise was about. It's supposed to be about this
human
versus machine thing, and I also don't care for the whole trope of the chosen one, which
I don't give a shit about that either.
And they they try to like go through get over that hump and put a twist on it by making someone else the chosen one. So then that the future will always be the same. So if the future is going to be the same, it just doesn't matter which person does it. what, like you said about Jill killing John Connor at the beginning, then what's the point of doing any of it? And yes, it can be because we're the human race and we're gonna fight to the last, to the last, but there's never gonna be a last because there's always gonna be a chosen one. And that's what the movie tells us at the end, basically, is that there's always going to be a chosen one. So that we're going to get to 2030 and we're going to have
pushing off.
We're going to have 10 more Terminator movies. And they're no longer going to be these what ifs, these like, alternate timeline movies. They're going to start becoming this like, all right, who's the next chosen one? How's this one gonna die? Like, I don't think that's where it's going for real, but like that's what it feels like. It's throwing the franchise off the rails with that, and with the half human, half droid thing. So it kind of, I don't know, like back to T1, man.
Well, I don't know if, and this is like, I think Dark Fate is really just an evolution of the series, because I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but to them, time traveling is not a big deal anymore. They just keep going, let's send somebody back to make sure this doesn't happen, right?
It's not a thing to do.
Yeah, it's to them, it's just like, I don't know if you got that vibe, but it wasn't as important. Like they didn't have a limited source of energy to like, oh, we only have one shot at this. To them, it's like, just send them back and we can make sure this doesn't happen.
And that's what I'm talking about. Is like, you're no longer.
Well, the sense of urgency, right? Yeah. So, but I think the vibe that I got from this movie was that Grace was set back in time so she can be saved in the future because of the commander. She was the commander, right? But it didn't really say that she was going to save everyone. She was just a good leader, right? It kept it kind of open. So, what's them to say that, like, just like in the beginning, Joe, they sent another Terminator back, popped John Connor, and things didn't matter anymore. So what's stopping them from going, oh, the Terminator we sent back failed, let's just send another one? You know what I'm saying? So, like, this is not as big as a sense of urgency. Like, they're not going to stop a nuclear war just because they saved a girl. It's just one more step in the puzzle in the Terminator universe. Because tomorrow could be like another guy. Oh, we found out that this guy needs to be saved, so we got to send somebody back to save him, because we need all these people, these key people in the future saved, because the Terminators keep coming back and trying to take him out, right? So it's almost like this like chess game between Terminators and humans, where Skynet's going, we need to kill these specific people in the past so we can visualize, or the sequence of events can happen so we can win against the humans, right? A consistent struggle. So the humans go, okay, we're finding out that's what they're doing, so now we have to match these guys so this stuff doesn't happen. So the end game won't occur, where the Terminators actually win. Yeah. Right. So that could be a possible way what they're leading into. And that's the problem with time travel, with writing time travels, because you can do it an unlimited amount of times. And that's why, I don't know if you guys got that vibe, but when they sent people back in time in Dark Fate, it wasn't a big deal. They were just like, let's just send them back. And
over and over. That's what Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, whatever Carl was saying, it was like, every time they sent him back, I was like, well, that's not an urgency sort of thing.
Right. And I think this is why I say it's an evolution of the series. When we first watched the movie, we go, going back in time is a big deal. Like, oh, they went back in time, right? That's special. But then as we learn more about the world and our future in Skynet and Terminator world, we just noticed that this is a common thing for them. And it's not something that, like, it's just something they do because that's their strategy as far as the plan goes. It's not like a one-shot deal. It's just it's part of their tactics to win the war in the future. So in a way, we're only seeing, like, if this is the puzzle or this is the big picture, we're only seeing this much of it, right? Because, like, we don't know what the end game is for the Terminators are. So, like, these movies are showing different pieces of it, putting it together to what really is the where they really win. Because you notice that they kind of win in the future, but they always lose somehow. Right? Skynet never always stays victorious. There's always a point in time where they lose. Yeah. In Salvation, they lost. So what's them to stop saying, oh, let's go back in time and kill Christian Bale? Right? So that's what I mean by this whole Terminator thing. what we're only seeing like the unveiling of what the Terminator universe is. And I've never really watched anything else or read any of the comics, so I don't know what supplements all these theories that I have. So if there's anything that you guys have seen, I'm totally open to that, right?
Well, I've read some of the comic books, and one of my favorites is Terminator versus RoboCop, and they kind of ended up like we were saying, like this isn't RoboCop, it's Terminator. But actually, in the comic book of Terminator versus RoboCop, RoboCop ends up playing this pivotal character, and I wish they would have adapted that just to finish out the story, where RoboCop ends up basically losing his humanity and becoming fully like this AI of sorts, but it's that little spark of humanity that makes it so that he can end Skynet and all this stuff. I'm not going to get into all that stuff right now, but it's really cool. Frank Miller wrote it. John Bogdan.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's really good. But I'm glad that you brought up the other things about kind of the how things, the sense of urgency with the time travel and things like that, and how that was important originally, and then it just became a strategy where like we'll just keep sending people back and everything like that, because I want to go into where could things possibly go from this point, and what are I don't know. I have some ideas about this. Maybe you two have some ideas about this. Where can we go from here to there? Because we have kind of come to this climax of Terminators where people, it feels like things have waned down, but there's things that we have enjoyed even from this last film, despite we're still talking about it. We hate a film, but why do we talk about it if we hate it so much? Right? And so in the next segment that I want to do right here after this break, I want to talk about what are ideas about where do we go in the future for Terminator, and how do we reinvigorate this franchise, because we're creative types here. So after this little break, I want to show you this little snippet of Specimen 6. Let's go into the future of the Terminator franchise.
Fiona, you in there, sweetie? I'm coming in. Hey guys, it's your bitch here, hot as fuck. Guess what I'm doing today? Hanging out, fucking playing Mortal Kombat. It's always the shit. Let me tell you all about it in my next video. Fiona, are you okay?
Okay, everybody. Well, I'm really hopeful and glad and everything, all that stuff that you enjoyed that last clip. So I showed you 3 clips tonight. Specimen 6 is going to be out very soon here. You can watch it on Vimeo. You can watch it on DVD here in just a very short few weeks here. Digital first. DVD is going to actually take a little bit of time. So we've talked a lot about the Terminator franchise and what it means to be American because of Terminator. And Terminator is a very great American, it's very world's very human sort of thing. Happy 4th of July, James Ong, Mariana Chipoletta. It's been a really great one. I hope everybody's been enjoying this. To kind of finish out the episode, I kind of want to just do a little short. Where, as creative types, are we going to take the Terminator franchise from this point? Because we've been through T1, T2, T3. We've been through 6 movies and a TV series, right? Where do things go from here? Because I think it's interesting that we kind of talked about how they keep going back to, like, we talked about the sense of urgency with time travel and how, like, it started out like, this is the one shot, we got to do it. But then it turned out into Terminator Dark Fate. It's like they keep sending them back, and Carl keeps warning me. Carl's sending me these little notes like, oh, look at this, I got to go stop this Terminator because it's happening again, right? But then you also introduce this whole idea about the multi-verse, the whole kind of like alternate timeline. So these are actually different timelines that are sending back these cyborgs, right? It's not the same timeline. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. The sense of urgency isn't there from the first one to the last one. So they have all these timelines are like keep sending back, creating more timelines, things like that. Maybe this Sarah Connor here, the grumpy Sarah Connor, not the really cool one, is just really kind of angry about this. She's like the one that got stuck with the short end of the shit stick, as it were. Where do we go? Tell me, my friends. Do you have any ideas where this go? Mariana Chipoletta?
Yes.
Do you have any cool ideas? Where can the Terminator franchise go from this point on that you think would be a really cool way to go?
I think they should really embrace the fact that that time travel is such a casual thing now in that universe. And if they do that with the combination of continuing to show selective timelines, I think that it could be, one of those things where you could make infinite number of movies from it. So from a movie making perspective, you have a lot of reference and a lot of fodder there. From a writing perspective, it kind of creates this formula, and sometimes formulas can become stagnant and stale. But I think if they play their cards right, they can really, they can rebuild this franchise to be something really complex and really something that could stick with us in the same sense that like a TV show would, but movie length wise.
Yeah. That's a good one. Hey, James.
Okay. All right. So, I actually just thought about this as we were conducting the episode. I think as I kind of thought about Terminator as treated the way Predator has been, right? Predators have been around forever, and so that's why you see like in some of the scenes, like this Predator has a gun from Civil War, right, as a trophy. One of them has a katana, right, from samurai era. And I think like if we go back onto this whole like what is Skynet's end game plan, like the Avengers end game, all these things coming together for this one big. If Skynet knows it's going to lose at this certain pivotal point in time, if you look at this flowchart, and the end of it is the death of Skynet, and Skynet sees that and goes, okay, but how does this happen? And these small victories win the war. Skynet's always actively going to send back Terminators to those periods of time to stop them from existing, right, or winning or whatever. So that death never happens to Skynet. Skynet's actually afraid of this, right? That's why it's doing this. And so if we have that future in mind, there's like what Mariana said, there's limitless possibilities for episodes where maybe in medieval times they're fighting a Terminator, right? Maybe like in the Civil War they're fighting a Terminator because there's a certain person there from the legacy that they have to kill because this happens, that needs to happen for this to happen, right? So I'm thinking about it as far as a video game goes in a flowchart. If you win this, it goes to this path, this goes to this path, but all the paths lead to the death of Skynet. But now Skynet's the main character, and it's trying to prevent its own death, right? And everybody else is just side characters, and that would be a great flip to the story of Terminator, where Skynet was really in control, and it's afraid of its death, giving that sense of humanity to Skynet that it's afraid to die. Look at that. I'm not in a writing school, but I just wrote that this episode.
Yeah, you and I should just like collaborate, and we'll just create the rest of the Terminator.
That's great. Yeah, let's sell our script to Fox or Disney now, and
I'm sure they'll love it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think that sounds awesome. Yeah, let's like pitch that over to the Disney folks, and Walt Disney would be having his frozen head rolling around.
Right.
Well, like some TV shows, like it's a blank slate at the beginning of the TV show, and I think they could totally do that with the Terminator franchise because of the way they use time time travel.
Yeah.
And you could totally go back to the blank slate of, okay, Skynet's just going to be like, all right, well, scratch that plan, and then we'll just try this plan. And it's just, skipping between those two. So far it's been just skipping between those two like time periods, but like James said, like you could have it go into anywhere in time.
Well, the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame gave me inspiration because all those movies are connected in some way or form.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them don't even happen on Earth. They happen in other galaxies.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it's just time. And time zones, time era, right? But the end game was for Thanos to get all the gems. They snapped. That was the thing that they wanted to prevent. In this case, it's Skynet preventing its own death, right? So that's kind of what I was doing. And all these other movies lead up to that point. But since like you're not limited to this confined space, since you're talking about time travel, you can really take it anywhere, right? And people don't have to win all the time. So they can really make a movie where the main character dies, right? But it's not hopeless because the next it just goes into this branch where they have to now make sure that they have to win this one, right? Stuff like that. So it's not like white or black, right? There's multiple opportunities, multiple battles to win. And I think that's what, if you look at it as a big chart, you can really be have artistic liberty with Terminator.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe? What do you think is going to happen?
I think what's going to happen is that the Terminator and Planet of the Apes kind of take place in the super future, and so you're going to have John Connor of the past that's going to end up jumping into a spaceship, and he's going to go out into space, and then he's going to go through a time warp thing, and then he's going to bring along this claw, which is from Skynet and Cyberdyne Systems and stuff like that. He's going to bring that with him over there, and then he's actually accidentally going to crash into 1,000 years in the future, and then the apes are going to take the claw thing, and then they're going to turn a Terminator ape into something like that, and John's going to have to fight off the Terminator future with the Planet of the Apes and things of that nature. And that's what I want to see. Actually, I kind of want to see anything other than what I've seen for the last couple, because I think they keep trying to keep doing what they're doing. And I really do. I love the Sarah, the John, the Kyle sort of holy trinity. But since they've kind of burned that into the ground, I think we need to kind of let those ashes kind of go. Let those things go, because either that or re-embrace them and start over. I don't think we can start over at this point. I think we need to take the cool Terminator concept, the killing mindless machine thing, and mash it up with something else and see what happens. That's what I think. But me, I just love to see Terminator no matter what, in any situation. I mean, it could show up in a Disney cartoon, it's all of a sudden going to kick Beauty and the Beast.
Beast in the face.
And he just shows up and he starts slaughtering everything in that area. So that's what I think.
Turns out Gaston has actually been a Terminator all along.
All along.
Maybe. Give me more Terminator. I honestly don't care. I mean, I'll keep critiquing it. I'm just ever since T1, T2, I'm just a huge fan. I have such good memories. And even Dark Fate can't really crap upon it so bad that I'm not going to revisit again, because you keep giving me cool science fiction ideas like the, behind James there, and you keep giving me just cool stuff. It doesn't even have to have Arnold in it anymore.
But doesn't it?
I don't think so. I think they might actually do better without Arnold at this point. I love Arnold, I do, but you can't keep explaining away. It's the skin's old, so we have to keep pushing things along. So that's why he looks old. It's Terminators don't all have to look like Arnold. We've explained that away many years ago. Just get somebody else cool.
If you think about it, I mean.
So who do you think should play Arnold? Should play Arnold? Should play the Terminator?
Anybody can play the Terminator.
No, but do you have someone in mind that you would love to see play the Terminator?
Lucy Lawless, because she's amazing, and I love Xena. as everybody knows. So Lucy Lawless could show up being the Terminator. Anybody, Bruce Campbell could show up. You know, all the cool people could show up being even, I mean, they don't have to be old or young. They don't have to be any age whatsoever.
You know what I would like to see?
Hmm.
Each one of the Expendables become a Terminator.
God, yes, you could have Stallone show up. You could have, oh my God.
All of them.
I love the Expendables. Oh, that's a new episode coming up very soon. Is Expendables 1 through 3 on No Country for Joe and Mariana. I love the Expendables films. Boy, I could talk
So
about
many explosions.
Oh, yeah, explosions, both of like the variety on screen and also in my pants. I'll tell you
Yeah.
what. I get that murder.
Sploosh.
I love that. I had a really great time. I hope everybody else had a really great time here on the Happy 4th of July Terminator special of sorts. I think we were a little off track here or there. I really hope that you enjoyed what we talked about, and I hope you enjoyed the little clips of Specimen 6 I showed you. Actually, and James doesn't even know what clip I'm going to show you.
Man, that's scary.
Do I know what clip it is? Is it the one you showed me?
Maybe. It might also be kind of like this one. We had this wonderful moment. I'm not going to tell anybody right now, but James, I said, James, hey, be in my movie. And the very first day that we started shooting, I put him in a very interesting position. Compromising position. That may or may not be the scene that I show you folks that James doesn't know. You'll already know by this point, but James won't. He'll be watching like, oh God, what did Joe do? Oh God, what did Joe do? All I gotta say is like, James is like this. Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. All right, well, thank you everybody. Mariana Chipoletta, if people were gonna watch the Terminator films, what sort of Italian drink and eat should they go for?
You know, I'm not going to say an Italian drink. I'm going to say just straight beer.
Straight beer for Terminator.
Straight
America.
This is America. You grab a hot dog or a hamburger and a beer, and you watch this movie and all of the other ones.
How do you make a hot dog in Italian?
Ustel.
Oh my gosh, that actually sounds really delicious. I could go for one of those right now. I'll tell you.
You
what.
want some Ustel in your mouth?
I could go for a few of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet.
Thank you, James, for joining us on this wonderful Terminator Happy 4th of July special. We'll see everybody later on. Yeah, here in a couple days, we're going to have another really great guest. So, a filmmaker interview. Please join us again. We'll talk to you soon. You take care of yourselves. Bye.